Welcome to episode 11 of Rugby Nation. I'm here with Justin Harris and Iain Payten, two of the best rugby minds in the business. One very smart, one very
small.
Funny. Plenty to talk about again this week. And Justin, it's great to have you back, and you're looking very corporate today. Is this corporate Goog?
This is corporate Goog. I've been doing deals all day. Pen, suit, glasses. It's the three ingredients necessary to do deals.
And what have you been doing, Pato?
Winning.
Oh, really?
So much winning.
What does winning look like at Rugby.com.au?
If you don't know what winning looks like, Adam, it's probably a bit late to tell you now.
Oh, I did play in an era at the Rebels where we lacked that. And speaking of which, the results in Super Rugby this weekend, disappointing. I was talking to someone on the way to the ground that if Australian teams dominate this weekend, we'll get all teams through, three teams through to the finals. Ain't going to happen, I don't think. It's going to be very tough. Looking like maybe even just the one.
Yeah, well, I was just saying before, I think the Waratahs could be a bit Miley Cyrus. They'll come in like a wrecking ball and hit
Did you just make that up?
I did, off the top of my head.
I don't listen to
the Rebels had to win last week, I thought, to lock down a final spot. They obviously have to go to Christchurch this weekend and then play the Chiefs at home. Chiefs just beat the Crusaders, so they're two tough games.
Crusaders just lost to the Chiefs. They'll be filthy.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll have, they needed one more win out of that last three, and they haven't got it yet. So they still need it. Waratahs are playing the Brumbies this weekend at home, tails up after beating the Rebels. Kopi Kepu's last game as a Waratah, plenty to play for. They can knock off the Brumbies and potentially hurt them as far as finishing second on the log, or the ladder, as the log, as the Africans say. The Waratahs, they have to win probably two more, you'd say, in the next two to make the final. So, they've thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, but, playing with a bit of freedom now, the Waratahs. Everyone had them written off, me included, a couple of weeks ago. But they're one of, I think I counted it up, 12 teams still alive.
Wow, I didn't know that.
To go.
And looking at the Waratahs, you keep mentioning it every week. Mm-hmm. They win this week at bonus point. What then happens to this rotation resting policy against the Highlanders away? Actually, let's park that. Let's go through some of the scenarios, because that will certainly highlight in it the Brumbies. What do they need to do? Quick summary of what needs to happen for them to take that top spot.
Yeah, it's that boring part of the year where you've got to do the maths and get the slide rule out. And the Brumbies, if they get another couple of points, I think that'd be enough for anyone.
So they could lose twice and get two bonus points?
Yeah, potentially. They're on 39 points. Generally, if you're at 40, 41, you're going to win a conference. The Rebels, they are on 34. They'd have to get, as I say, one more win. They'd have to get 5+ points from the last two, and the Brumbies get none to finish on top. I think that's unlikely. Waratahs just straight out have to get two wins. There is sort of the very, very slight mathematical chance that if they get two bonus point wins and the Brumbies get nothing, et cetera, they can be on top. But that's also fanciful. So can we get three teams in, Haas? I think it's unlikely. I would say that, two would be a good result.
Yeah, I'm hopeful of two. I'm worried about one, but hopeful of two, especially the Lions kicking into some form as well. Goog, I'm going to ask you, rotation, last game, need to win it. There's a rule book here saying got to rest players. What's Daryl Gibson going to do? He's going to have to do it.
I'm not sure about the sanction.
Is there a sanction?
No, it was a handshake.
It'd be really disappointing if they didn't, because other teams are sitting there going, well, I rested my players and we missed that game. It's going to cause all that, but it's just a really interesting dynamic to leave it this late. But you got to think, and this is what people got to realise, there's everyone's sort of barking up about this rotation thing. It's about the players and resting them in a World Cup year. It's got nothing to do with anything else. And I know, even playing, having that break in the middle of a season, in the middle of a year, and I know you got the fans and you got the players, it is the players are going to need it, and it's going to come into really, how can I say, it's going to serve the Wallabies well during a World Cup, the amount of players they're going to rest. But it comes at the expense of the Waratahs potentially missing out on the final. It's a very difficult one.
This has been clouded by the fact that the Waratahs have elected to do their resting at the end of the year. If you know, and they have Sikopi Kepu and Rob Simmons still to have their one game off, right? There are a number of others who apparently need a second game off. Hooper, Beale, Foley. I get the idea that it might be a play to that they will rest those first two, and that they might seek the dispensation to not rest the other guys for the second. The other coaches, trust me, they are watching this with eagle eyes because they all bought in, as you said earlier. Yep, we'll do it, start of the year. They took their medicine early. It shouldn't matter that the Waratahs have to win X from X, right? That's their choice. They've squeezed themselves into this corner. At the start of the year, the other coaches planned out how their season would roll out. And just because they're a little more comfortable now, that's due to their good planning.
Well, I've got to look at it, but...
late in the season's when players probably most need... so I think the whole policy and the way it's constructed, the way the penalty maybe, is it a gentleman's agreement, is it binding? Players need the rest most now in the back end, back quarter of the competition when fatigue is cumulative impacts.
Have another crack.
There's 4 C's in it, 7 M's. And so getting those rests out early is probably fool's gold rest period as well.
Yeah.
So are we creating... there's probably guys that are going to arrive at World Cup just as fatigued as the other players that didn't get a rest.
Now, just another one from my end, looking at the last match with the Waratahs, controversy with Curtis Rona for yours, Pato. I'm just sort of looking at the highlight here. This is a really interesting call. I don't know where I sit with it. And in fact, Curtis Rona took it to Instagram and said, "What do you think?" And some of the responses there were pretty interesting as well. But what do you do on that one?
So you're talking about, obviously, Curtis Rona, cover tackle, tackle in inverted commas,
and we're just looking at
Korobedi. Look, I think if you're fair dinkum, it's a penalty at least. It's probably a card. It hits all the marks. Arm tucked in. There was, these days they look at the contact, where the contact is made, even head on head. And there were some people from the Northern Hemisphere looking at that saying that should have been a red card. And so therefore, if, there was a sanction, should Korobedi have been awarded a penalty try, the Rebels been awarded a penalty try, I'd say yes. I would have thought that was a penalty try. Were it not for an illegal tackle, you can't look at if he had made a legal tackle, because he didn't. Were it not for what was an illegal tackle, it would have been a try.
So you reckon Vessels, fair shout?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it was a funny old game, that one. There was actually there were pretty ordinary calls going both ways. A few forward passes, and in the end, it was a good old square up. It was like the under sixes, 2 knock-ons play on. You probably did. It probably the right team won in the end. The stronger team on the night, but. If you're Dave Vessels, you're looking at that thinking you got the wrong end of the green and sliding doors. You might have got that win, and that could well be the difference between them making their first ever finals or not.
Look, I'm just going to quickly talk about. I know we're going back on the Waratahs because that was a big game. I don't want to go into the Rebels, but just a quick tip: Waratahs and Brumbies for yours this weekend.
Oh, just Brumbies. I think Brumbies are far more patient and much more considered in what they're doing on the field now. They will have dissected Waratahs and will know exactly what style of game they're going to play against them.
I'd concur. I think that that's been the really impressive thing, is that they've been able to apply a different game to the opponent they're playing. They were really, really patient against the Sunwolves. That was a big banana skin, I thought. You lose control of how the tempo of that game goes, and you can lose up there. Without a doubt, you get Samisi Masaraiwa running around with spiders on him, and you can lose that game really easy. They stayed patient. They went to what worked in the rolling maul, and they were losing their bonus point at one point. Stayed patient, got it back, got the job done.
And congratulations to the Colonel, the Brumbies hooker with a hat trick.
Yeah, fifth sub in history.
How did they score those 3 tries? How did he score those 3 tries?
I think one was a 50-metre chip over the top. Yeah,
joined the maul and helped him through.
Maul? Yes. But next one. What was the other one?
Maul.
And third one?
I think it was a maul.
Okay, sweet. Let's move on to the next match of the round, and we're just going to sort of then talk about the Rebels as we do that. They're taking on the Crusaders, the Rebels, and for mine, you don't want to play the Crusaders in Christchurch at any point. But after a loss last week, what's doing with the Rebels? Good? Like, what? Why didn't they put that one away on the weekend? I just can't work them out. They're a hard team to support at the moment, but they're still alive.
Yeah, I just feel, they're just not... The squad they put together has been put together to play a certain style of rugby, and they're just not handling moments of adversity when it's not going that well for them, particularly when their forward pack's not being able to generate at least advantage line rugby for Kenya and Quade Cooper. And for whatever reason, they just haven't got that backbone to come back to a style of game and quickly recoup their sort of downturn in dominance. They started very well, but they're just up and down on that roller coaster. The Waratahs, I think, have been probably consistently disappointing. You've got to say across the season, but the Rebels have showed us that they are capable of dominating sides with sustained moments of time. They're just not able to at the moment.
Well, the danger for the Rebels going to the Christchurch, apart from all the myriad dangers that you go when you're there, but teams with strong defence and strong structured defence have shown that they can, as Goog says, rattle the Rebels off that front, the front foot gain line rugby, and that's when you get the likes of Cooper and Meeks really making metres in the middle, and the Crusaders are one of the best defensive teams going around. So it'll be a tough day. They as we saw the Brumbies, you alluded to it, the Brumbies went over there and really stuck it to them early. That's what they're going to have to do. Like, they're going to have to get good old-fashioned sort of, not punchy, but close to it, really, really get stuck in.
And if I'm Scott Robinson dropping that game in Fiji against the Chiefs, I'm going, thank God I've done it now, and not too concerned about...
Are they off? Are they off? The Crusaders?
Just they played against the Waikato Chiefs have been consistently involved in some of the best super games we've seen this year. Chiefs v Auckland Blues, Swings from Mind, Chiefs v Otago Highlanders. And, if you're Scott Robinson, you're telling the Crusaders players not to give the Rebels any sort of broken field turnover opportunities. Don't kick long and in, kick long and out. Slow the game down, then speed it up, control pace of game, because they didn't control the pace of the game in Fiji at all.
Well, the surprise packet this year's been the Reds, and I know they went down the Jaguares. I would say they were brave. Unlucky, but brave. And we've spoken about it every week, and there's a great post on Rugby.com.au Instagram of Samu Karevi. He is on fire at the moment. He cannot be stopped. But what do you do in a season like the Reds are having now? It is over, but you've got to give them a golf clap. I think it's a pass mark for their season.
Samu Karevi is emblematic of what's right and wrong with their season. He's been exceptional, best season he's ever had, but he's been the only one. And I read a really good summary that the Reds have the ability to, blunt their way to a performance. They just don't have a sharp edge, and I think that they've really been hurt by the loss of Jordan Petaia at the start of the year. Had you had Petaia in that back line, had you had Felipe Dangunu in the back line who broke his arm, you would have had a lot more strike power. Also, missing a 10 still. Should they have let Quade Cooper go? So there are some elements to the Reds. Yes, brave. Yes, committed. Yes, inexperienced. But I remember saying this stuff about them last year, and are we any further along? They're losing Samu Karevi probably at the end of this year. So where do they look next year? Jordan Petaia, I suppose, takes that mantle.
What is about this Reds team where we can't actually just say what Payten said there, have an honest appraisal? Because every time I look at a performance, they only just lose, but show me enough to say, hey, that's not a bad footy side. It's frustrating for you, Goog, to watch that, because I know you follow all Australian teams very closely, but this Reds team has almost turned itself around, but still hasn't got there. It's still second last, right?
The more times someone says this is a young group, that starts to become problematic in itself. If you recruit a team, then it's whatever age it is, and that's the team you've recruited, and that's the team you're selecting. Don't swing back around then and be retrospective on that and use that as some sort of excuse, and then tell everyone you're not going to use it as an excuse.
I don't know if it's an excuse being they are a young side that's rebuilt. They've lost a lot of cap. They've cut a lot of, once they cut a lot of salary cap out of it with the departure of Quade and other players.
Don't get down in the dumps that we're been critical of the Reds because this is what has to happen, right? For them to grow and to be a contender in Super Rugby, incredibly tough comp. We've just mentioned that 12, they're 2 wins outside of contention for the 8. You know what I mean? So
you've got to keep the group together.
Yeah,
right?
and they will. With the Ben Darwin theory of cohesiveness and all of that sort of stuff, like they grow together, and they will grow together.
Look what happened. So let's go right back in time. 96, 97, Brumbies came together. 96, 97 made the final. Axed about 60% of their squad through age, retirement, and just better players on the market. 98 finished 9th. 99 5th, 2000 made the final, 2001 won it. That's the sort of time frame you're talking about.
Yeah.
So this Reds, if they stay together, they're on that sort of timeline.
I agree. Look, if Samu stays or goes, so be it. But I think I give them a pass mark this year, and I know we don't accept, a second or wooden spoon at least, but I think they've done some good things there with the roster they've got, and they're almost building for that.
Are they better than last year?
stick.
Are they better than... Yes,
Yeah.
I would say yes.
Yeah, they are.
I've been more impressed with them this year.
And they've still got a couple of games to go,
Yeah.
right? So they've got the Brumbies and they've got the Blues this weekend. You're tipping?
I'm tipping the Reds.
Yeah, I'll go with the Reds.
Okay, good. Righto. We're back on track. Can the Jaguares win it?
Yes.
I know they played it. You reckon?
Yeah.
What about you? Are they the real deal?
Oh, I think so. I mean, when you look at... they're now sitting in second. Hurricanes obviously have the more points, but you can't. It's 1, 2, 3 in each conference. So the Jaguars and the Brumbies are duelling for that second spot. We know how important second spot is because you get a home quarter, and then if you win it, you get a home semi. You only have to travel for the final. Right?
Yeah.
We've seen the Lions do that 2 years in a row. Jaguars playing at home, that's as good as a 15-point advantage playing in Buenos Aires, particularly in the finals where teams have to do it within a week, etc., etc. Can the Jaguars then go to Christchurch and beat the Crusaders? Yes, they can. They are literally one of the
best touring sides in the comp.
Exactly. They've won 3 of their last 4 in New Zealand.
I don't think they've ever lost in Australia. Do you say Jaguars? I say Jaguares. What do you say? Good?
I say Jaguares, like that.
The most remarkable thing is they change their team with about 5 or 6 guys each week, right? So they are coming in hot to the finals, I reckon. They've got some of their top players nice and fresh.
I agree. I reckon they're the real deal. Now, let's have a bit of a throwback because we are 20 years. It's been 20 years since the 1990 World Cup, I think.
1999 even.
I missed the 9, sorry. But it's been 20 years. Does it feel like that? Good, because I was actually supposed to tour with you on that. Not the World Cup. There was another
More important tour happening.
Another tour. Can you talk us through that tour?
So you were both there?
Adam was supposed to be.
Right.
He was wishing he was there. We were on tour. It was the Australian Legends tour.
How are you a legend at that age?
Well, the concept was pretty loose then. The definition of a legend was just being fit enough to walk and tie up your own boots.
So the context for this is obviously on Thursday, the 1999 team that won the World Cup are having a reunion lunch in Sydney.
Yeah, great. Cauliflower Club, yeah?
Yep, that's right. Raising money for charity. So apparently they've got a very, very good turnout. These things you normally get sort of half the blokes turn up, but there's only 4 or 5 who can't make it apparently. So
this should be good.
A good lunch and great memories. 1999 Haas. I contend that that's sort of like the underappreciated World Cup win of ours. I think 91 was a big deal because it was the first. People remember the 03 final we talked about last week. The jersey got voted the most popular, and it was one of those ones that I'm not saying that it's not valued, but I think of winning World Cups is a very, very hard thing to do, and that team had a lot of success across that period. It just gets blended in with
That's
a
true.
bunch
it does
of
get blended
Bledisloes
in with some of the great stuff, but I would say that I remember being at the Bondi Hotel watching the semi-final, clear as day in that 99 when he kicked the field goal, because one of my mates got up on the bar to celebrate and kicked the tip jar over, which was like this big jug of all different coins, and it went everywhere. And then people diving on the floor.
People being you.
Yeah, just trying to pick up the coins, but
body height.
But I'm picking gut. But I do remember that was the year that inspired me to want to keep going and play.
I was at the stadium watching it.
And yes, and you were. I've got in my notes here with a green wig and a belly full of beer.
Oh, the final, yes. So that I think we've got a photo of it.
It wasn't a wig.
it was a hat, Jester's hat, and I was with Nathan Sharp. We had our faces painted.
Good chance he was wearing a wig.
Yeah, he was wearing a wig.
Did he concede then?
He had conceded by then. And I'll tell you, we're walking into the stadium and there was a gentleman selling a whole heap of French paraphernalia and Australian paraphernalia, and there were 80,000 people walking past this little desk before you entered the stadium. And Sharpie and I decided we'd need hats, and so we both tried on hats. And I said to Sharpie, "Oh, mate, how's it look?" You know, and Sharpie looked at me and went like this and ran off away, hundreds of metres away. And so I turned to the guy behind the desk, and it's probably one of those, you know, when you're a kid, you steal a Mars bar or something from a newsagent.
So Sharpie had a hat on too at this point.
Packet of bubble gum or something. It's one of my regrets, you know. This is one of my regrets. So I looked at him, he looked at me, a bit of a stare off, and then I just sort of shrugged and ran as well with my hat on. And that bloke clearly had a decision to make: chase 2 second rowers and probably run me down, but come back to an empty desk because 80,000 people were pouring past his paraphernalia desk, and they'd relieve him of the... So he gracefully let me disappear off into the night, afternoon, and partake in a World Cup victory.
And I don't think anyone saw you for the next 4 days, let alone him for the rest of his life. But we'll move on from that one very quick. But
and good on you, Google. You told me that he went back to the guy and sorted him out later.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
You did that?
I felt very guilty.
Why is in my notes here it said Adam worked at McDonald's as the Hamburglar? Who wrote these notes? Did you add that?
Let's talk about that, Adam.
That's right.
Did you work as the Hamburglar? I can see similarities.
That is genuine. It's in my notes here. Are you expecting me to read that out? Well,
it's actually, I mean, it's an interesting question. Have you ever seen them in the same place?
Oh, well, okay. Quickly, let's go to sevens. Men's wrap-up, disappointing. They were better the week before. Finished 11th in Paris, right? But the big issue for mine, not issue, but the news on this is that they finished 7th in the series, and they had aspirationally wanted to finish in the top 4. So to finish 7th, that's disappointing. Lockie Miller, disappointing for him because he's been okay the last 2 tournaments, and whether they'll see him in some of the Oceania qualifying. But let's look at the teams that have gone through: New Zealand, Fiji, USA, South Africa. Fair shout. I think they're the 4 best teams. They'll go through to the Olympics. Now focus is on the Oceania side of things, taking on Samoa and Tonga. Like, we'll be right, but gee, it's not a lay-down misère at all.
No, that's the difficulty with the sevens, isn't it? Right across the board there, you can have, you know, Kenya have won a series at one stage.
Yep.
You know, and Spain beat Samoa to get into the qualifier, into the series against Samoa in Monaco.
The repechage, last Olympics,
you know, So you've got all sorts of seesawing.
There's no guarantees, that's for sure. So that the Oceania qualifier is in November. I guess positive now is you've got a lot of time to prepare for it. Like, if we're fair income, we should be able to take Samoa, although they finished very, very strongly this year. They've got Gordon Titchens coaching them now, so that's a ding-dong battle. I think the last time...
Where did they beat us, Samoa? Was it in Singapore? In the
that's a good question.
When we had that dream run, so they can beat us.
Yeah,
right?
They sure can. And
look, there's no slouches that haven't qualified.
This is the point, right? So
England, Argentina, France...
Your best bet to get to the Olympics, just quietly, is to win that tournament, because if you go in the next 2, so let's say it's us, Samoa and Tonga, winner goes through the Olympics, the next 2 go into the global repechage, and as you point out, here are the teams who are potentially going to be in that: England, Argentina, France, Ireland, Spain, Canada, Kenya, all still chasing 1 spot. So that's tough bananas, and that's in June next year. So you've got to wait a long time before you know if you're in the Olympics, if you don't get in this Oceania qualifier. So all eyes, all focus on winning that damn tournament in November.
Quick one, and before we hit to the women's sevens team, you can pick 1 player in Super Rugby to be part of that Oceania qualifying series and go to Tokyo. 1 player. All bets are off within Australian rugby.
Non-Wallabies, because they'll be at the World Cup.
No, you can pick. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Who would you pick? Who would you grab across the whole planet?
Good question. I've always thought Michael Hooper would be a fantastic sevens.
Yeah, he'd be good. What about you? Good?
Tate McDermott.
Good answer.
Keep an eye on that.
Someone like James O'Connor or someone that, Matt Tamua, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like there's
Quadzilla.
Yeah, well, he could be part of it. Let's.
Oh, he's got a nickname. Must be good.
There is
anyone that gets a nickname now must be a good player.
Hold on, what's that called?
Sorry, Gook.
No, but I was never like Gookzilla or something. I was
Gookzilla.
Quadzilla.
Gookzilla now.
Rodzilla. Tom and Thor.
Keep an eye out for. You might be closer than
He's
you.
behind you.
Closer than you know. There is talk that that those who don't make the sevens guys are going to have a look through the ranks of people who don't make the Wallaby squad this year and draft them into the sevens program, or if they
So they should.
And Tate McDermott there's a crowded field of good halfbacks. Tate might not make it. He's played for the Aussie team before. I'd say keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, okay. Sounds like a bit of news out of the editor of Rugby.com.au. Let's tuck into the Bay Ritz leg, the last leg of the Women's Seven Series.
Biarritz.
Sorry, say that again?
Biarritz.
What did I say?
Bay Ritz.
Bay Ritz. Okay, so let's tuck into Biarritz, and I hope I did a better job. What do the girls need to do now to automatically qualify?
So you just got to stay above France. They're in fourth spot. France are in fifth spot. Boil it down, they've just got to get through the pool, and they're through. So effectively win the first two games against Spain and Ireland. Girls are going off to defend their Olympic title. They had their strut back the last tournament. That was a big focus for them. Is like, let's stop worrying about who could beat us and dominate. And they made the final there in Glendale and could have beaten the Kiwis. They looked a lot more like the Australia of old.
Thank you, Justin, for just being here. You've been awesome. And Payten, thanks for calling the game
Adam.
as you do. Episode 11, signing off. Rugby Nation. We'll see you here next time.